Welcome everyone, whether you're here live with Osteo Boston as a member or you're listening to our YouTube recording. I want to thank you for being present tonight or for listening later. If you like what you hear, if you can give us a thumbs up or consider subscribing, that way we can determine content better. So we appreciate you, and I would like to bring up our speaker tonight. Pretty excited about this speaker because we've been planning this for a while, and I want to tell you we're going to be having Kaari Prehab, and the woman that is actually our speaker tonight is Michaela Smith. Michaela is a Yoga Medicine Therapeutic Specialist. She's a Yoga Alliance registered teacher, a Nutritional Therapy Practitioner, an NASM-certified personal trainer. She has a Bachelors of Science, a Nutrition Didactic Program, Dietetics from Bastyr University. She is also the Osteoporosis Program Director at Kaari, and Kaari is spelled Kaari, meaning she supervises the programs and makes sure participants are guided and supported. She teaches movement and nutrition full-time, both in person and virtually. And she uses a combination of yoga, strength training principles, meditation, and functional movement. She's passionate about offering a safe and sustainable practice. She has a multimodal background where she blends her science, self-awareness to intuition, and dedicated to her clients. Her collaboration on this program has helped dozens of people increase their bone density. She's the co-creator of Osteo Vitality, an in-person small group strength training program for osteoporosis, and serves as co-creator and program director of Kaari's Strength Training and Yoga for Osteoporosis. She works one-on-one with clients, supporting adults to improve their mobility, strength, and independence, and guiding her nutrition clients to uncover the root causes of their symptoms. We are really excited to have her, and she, because of her holistic approach, she empowers women and men to transform themselves so they can feel and function at their best. And so I'm pretty excited to bring up Michaela Smith, and thank you, Michaela, for being on here today.
Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here and to share some really practical tools for strength training and moving with osteoporosis today. So I'm just going
Wonderful.
to share my screen here.
Sure. Let me remove myself. And there we go.
There we go. And that looks okay on everyone's screen?
That looks great.
Okay, great. So we just use this slide here in the beginning to show kind of a pretty amazing statistic that about 64% of patients report not receiving information from their healthcare providers about bone health and exercise to help prevent osteoporosis. So clearly this is a topic that needs a lot more awareness and education. So we really want to get as much information out to the public as possible. Today, we're going to be talking about combating osteoporosis with strength training and just giving you really practical tips for what to look for in an effective strength training routine, specifically for osteoporosis. So I know everybody here doesn't need a review of what osteoporosis is, so this is just going to be a really brief slide, but I just want to touch base here so that we all have a common language so that as we move forward, we're all on the same page. So as you know, osteoporosis occurs when the body is losing too much bone mass, makes too little, or both of those are occurring at the same time. And the end result of that is that the bones are going to become more porous and less dense, and therefore they're going to be a lot more susceptible to fractures. The most common sites are going to be the low back, the hips, and the long bone of the legs, as well as the wrists. So those are the areas that we're going to really want to bring a lot of focus to when we're strength training, and you'll see how that comes into play as we keep talking here today. With normal bone remodeling, we have two cells that we're going to be really paying attention to, and that's osteoblasts. Osteoblasts, the B, they build bones. That's how I remember it. So they're responsible for forming new bone. And then osteoclasts are the cells that break down bone tissue. So they resorb tissue. And that's an important part of the process. We want to resorb kind of old, dead tissue and then lay down new tissue. But with osteoporosis, the problem is that the osteoclast activity is outpacing the osteoblast activity. So we want to bring those two back into balance or even try to bring the osteoblast activity higher than osteoclast activity. So that is kind of our goal when we're looking at strength training, and you'll see how that comes into play as we keep chatting here. So we're going to start here with the foundation of bone strengthening, and that's Wolff's Law. And Wolff's Law is a physiological principle that states that bones adapt to the loads that are placed on them to become stronger. But we also want to be able to think about this in the flip side as well, that if we're not placing any load or stimulus or stress on the bones, then they're not going to have a reason to get stronger, and our bodies are really efficient. So if there's not a reason to be laying down new tissue and expending that energy, they're not going to do it. So we need to put some sort of stimulus into the bones to tell them that they should become a little bit stronger and denser to the stress, the good stress that we're putting on them through strength training. In particular, bones really respond well to something called compressive loading. And I know that that can be a little bit confusing or counterintuitive when you're thinking about osteoporosis, because we often hear that compression fractures are a risk. And that is definitely true. Compression fractures are a big risk with osteoporosis. However, that is the force that the bones respond best to, and that the bones, that force causes that stimulation of the osteoblasts to lay down new tissue. The key is to apply that compressive force in a very specific and safe way that is different than what happens with a compression fracture. That compressive force can come from a few different sources. And the first one is going to be axial loading. We will dive into each of these in more detail. Next, we're going to have impact exercises. And then most importantly is that we want to be able to progress that loading over time. So that's where we talk about progressive overload. Sufficient loading is really important, so we need to make sure that we're providing enough stimulus, again, to tell the bones to lay down more tissue, and we want to do that in order to prevent continued weakening and increase your bone density. So diving into a little bit more of what that actually means when we're strength training and how to really utilize strength training in a really targeted and meaningful way to make sure that you're getting the results you're looking for. So first we have axial loading. Axial loading means that we're loading the bones from the top down, and it's a force that is coming again from the top down, and it's creating that healthy compression between the bones or onto the bones to stimulate, again, those osteoblasts. Compressive loading can come from exercises, or excuse me, axial loading can come from exercises such as an overhead press, which is really easy to visualize. You push the weights overhead. Now that force is coming down vertically in the same direction as gravity and creating that nice compressive force through the wrist. You can imagine that weight creating that force through the wrist, then through the spine, and then through the hips. So that overhead press is a really easy one to visualize what axial loading looks like. But axial loading is also when we hold the weights on our shoulders. So that would be like a rack position if you're familiar with strength training, or even a goblet position when you're holding it at the chest. Both of those place that load onto the shoulder girdle. And if you look at our little skeleton here, that shoulder girdle is on top of the spine. And so that force is again going to push the shoulder girdle down and create that nice, healthy, compressive force into the spine and even all the way down into the hips. Now, where it gets a little bit kind of fuzzy and doesn't feel as intuitive is when we look at an exercise such as a farmer's carry. So that's actually when you're holding two weights right down next to the sides of your body and you're walking with those weights. Now, it's the same idea as the rack or the goblet position where you're using that kind of downward pressure of that shoulder girdle again to create that force through the body. And those farmer carries are a really nice way to start to work a little bit heavier too, because we don't have to worry about moving the weights up to our chest or pressing them overhead. So it's a nice way to start to be able to work towards heavier loads and still get that axial load if shoulder mobility or strength is a limitation to put the weight overhead or to rest the weight on the shoulders. The next exercise or form of exercises that we use specifically for osteoporosis is going to be impact exercises. Once again, I think this can be a little bit confusing, just like the compressive force kind of feels a little counterintuitive, but that impact sends a similar stimulus through the bones. Instead of coming from the top down this time, it's coming from the bottom up through a ground force reaction. So impact training is exercises where you're hitting the floor and creating that ground force reaction that moves up through the legs, through the hips. And we do find that this seems to have a really beneficial effect on the bones of the hip and the femur in particular, which is a little bit harder to get to because of the shape and the way that their muscles are or aren't attached to the head of the femur there. So we find that impact exercises are a really important one for targeting the hip in particular, but they also have a lot of benefit for the spine as well. What those impact exercises do, it's the same thing as axial loading, but just with a different form of movement, is it's going to create that stress or that strain on the bones. And when I say stress, I mean a good stress, a stimulus onto the bones to trigger that remodeling and then therefore make them stronger. Many people come to us, a lot of endurance enthusiasts come to us, and they're so confused about how they ended up with osteoporosis. Maybe they've run marathons, or maybe they're big bikers. But the truth is that if you're a biker, you're not getting any impact because your feet aren't hitting the ground. And if you're a runner, you're not quite getting enough impact. And the body is a little bit funny sometimes, and it kind of starts to tune out repetitive stimulus, which is a little bit annoying because it'd be great if running could help us with our osteoporosis. However, it makes sense because if you think about how much we walk and potentially run, if we were always laying down new bone tissue with every foot stop on the floor, it could be a maladaptive situation. So the body is smart and it's efficient, but that means we need to learn how to work with it to really make sure that we're getting that right amount of stimulus. So if we look at this kind of measure of body mass, when we think about impact exercises, we're thinking about if you're looking at how much more impact it puts on the body compared to your body weight. So walking is only 1.2 times your body weight. So that's not a very significant stimulus, which is why walking isn't really the most effective way to improve your bone density. Whereas something like a heel drop provides about 3.6 times your body weight. So that's where we want to start to utilize those impact exercises to get more meaningful numbers and stimulus into the bones. Whenever we're introducing impact exercises for someone with osteoporosis, we always start really light, really small, and we work our way up. And some people might not make their way up to a jump squat or bigger impact movements, depending on their own personal anatomy or level of osteoporosis. However, we can still get that really important impact through things like step ups, heel drops, and even stomping. I know that's one of the higher ones, but you always have control of how hard your foot is hitting the floor there. So you can stomp a little lighter or a little harder to make it more or less stressful on the bones. And remember that stress is a good thing in the right dose. And then we're looking here at progressive overload. So this is a key principle to make sure that the improvements in bone density continue over time. So it is important to note that when you're thinking about strength training as an intervention for osteoporosis, it is a lifestyle intervention, meaning that you're in it for the long haul. You're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. But I think that for the most part, once you start strength training, you find that the benefits and the way that it makes you feel are so great that it becomes a little bit addictive in a sense. So you want to continue. So, with progressive overload, this is one of the most key principles in strength training. And what that means is that we're gradually increasing the weight, the resistance, or you can think of just the challenge of the exercises to continually stimulate and challenge the muscles and the bones. So, this is how we avoid plateauing or kind of leveling out in that impact or that stimulus to make sure that we keep improving both your strength of your muscles and the strength of your bones. When we implement progressive overload, there's a few ways that we want to do this. So the first thing that we're going to do is just kind of pay attention to your rate of perceived exertion. So how hard does the exercise feel? If you started with 5 pounds of an pressing overhead, and that felt really hard when you first started, but a few months later, 5 pounds at the same number of reps is starting to feel pretty easy, that means that it's time for you to make that exercise a little bit harder. So you're just monitoring that challenge, that intensity of your exercises, and you're aiming for the exercises to feel challenging but doable. And so when they start to feel a little bit easy, then you have to up the ante. How do we do that? There's a plethora of options of how you implement progressive overload, and a skilled coach can really help to make sure that it is safe and effective for you. But things that we're going to look at are changing the stimulus through increasing your weights, your reps, your sets, or even the exercise selection so that the exercise itself is harder, even if you're using the same weight. We do this over the long term, and when you're thinking about progressive overload, it's not necessarily a straight shot up. Sometimes there's little waves and dips and lifts, but the overall trend is upward. Now, when it comes to making sure that you're really working in a holistic way for osteoporosis, we also want to look at other factors, not just bone density, that are going to improve your quality of life, your safety as someone with osteoporosis. So, I'm sure I don't need to tell you, but some of our biggest concerns with osteoporosis are going to be our balance and our posture. We really want to make sure that balance is strong, that you learn how to catch yourself when you fall, that you build more stability in your gait and your day. And we do this, and that is because we want to reduce fractures as a result of falls. When we're thinking about posture, we're also thinking about fracture risk, but instead of fractures related to falls, we're thinking about compression fractures. So those are fractures that happen towards the front of the vertebra that is more susceptible to fractures. And that is often a result of that posture starting to round forward and placing more pressure on the front of the vertebra, and that can result in that compression fracture. And then, unfortunately, a compression fracture can continue that trend of that posture rounding forward because now that you're creating a little bit of that wedge shape in the spine, and it's going to continue to shift that posture forward. So strength training is a really excellent way to address both posture and balance. So through strength training, we're going to look at that picture of balance here for a moment. So strength training is a wonderful way to build more strength in the hips, the feet, the back, the core, and all of that is going to help to improve your balance. We use free weights, meaning dumbbells, kettlebells, resistance bands in our program, and we think the benefit of that is really huge because compared to an exercise machine at the gym that is taking you through a set trajectory of movement, learning how to pick up, move around, and do your exercises with free weights is going to throw you off balance a little bit by nature of the weight not being connected to something. It doesn't have a set trajectory. So you yourself have to learn how to navigate being thrown off balance and work with that weight. That naturally increases the stabilizing muscle activity as well as your core work to just navigate using those weights. And so we also always include specific balance exercises in our program. And with those balance exercises, we're trying to make sure that we're hitting balance from as many different angles as we can. So there are 3 systems that make up your balance. That's your vision, your inner ear, and then nerve endings in the muscles, the ligaments, and the joints called proprioceptors. And those you can think of as your body awareness system. It tells you where you are in space. So we use exercises that ask you to turn your head to stimulate the eyes and the inner ear, as well as exercises that kind of throw your proprioception off, so you have to work harder to regain it. Strength training in and of itself includes a lot of those exercises, and then we have fun, a lot of fun, coming up with kind of creative ways to pull more of that in as well. Bringing it back to posture here. Strength training is also a really wonderful way to improve your posture because as much as we love stretching, stretching feels really good. It can be really relaxing for the nervous system. But in terms of making really sustainable changes to your posture, it isn't the best approach. Whereas something like strength training, it provides more of a sustainable approach, meaning that the changes in the tissues tend to stick longer and better. And we do that through utilizing exercises that are going to help to actively open the front of the chest. So that's exercises like chest presses or chest flies. And then we also use exercises that are going to strengthen the back. And that could be something like a 3-point row, a band pull apart, lat pull downs. And all of those are we open the chest through our kind of front body exercises, and then we strengthen the back. And you can imagine that we get this nice combination of the chest having room to open, and now the back has strength to hold the chest open. So strength training is a really comprehensive way to work through the front and the back of the body to make sure that those, again, like those results actually stick. We do love to use yoga and some restorative practices as well because they also aid in that kind of freeing up and mobilizing of the chest, the thoracic spine, and the areas of the body that tend to result in poor posture or are attributed to poor posture. So when we look at this program in a whole, we're always trying to think of all of the different pieces we can address to make sure that you're building a really holistic, safe, and effective program for osteoporosis. And we do that through addressing our bone density through our key principles of strength training. That's our axial load, our impact training, and our progressive overload. And then we also address other pieces of bone health, your posture and your fall prevention through strength training, yoga, and then fun balance exercises as well. And then we have our upcoming program start dates, and we have a QR code here. And if you're interested in our program, you want to learn more about it, you can scan the QR code and it'll take you right to our website. And then we've got a perfect half hour to ask lots of questions. So I know there's probably lots of questions percolating, so we always love to just kind of open it up and chat and see what comes up in the conversation here.
Okay, should we leave the QR code up for a few minutes though?
Yeah, we can leave
Or
it up for a moment more and then I'll stop screen sharing and we can bring it back to the,
okay, because I can always reshare it, and especially even on the YouTube link.
yeah, that sounds good. Here, I'll give anybody one last second here to take a picture if they want it or to scan it. And then I'll stop screen sharing here and we can chat.
Okay, great. Well, wow. I love how you explain that. I love the three principles of what you do, the axial loading, the impact training, and the progressive overload makes so much sense when you put it like that. You know, it's so clear. Um, and I think that also the doing that with the balance training and making sure that people are secure. But you did receive a lot of questions, so I'm
Yeah,
going to go ahead
I see some questions
and look
popping
at the
up.
chat. Yeah. So one question someone had was, I think they wanted to know the heel drop. Would you want to demo that or?
Sure. Yeah, it's very simple. So I can just scooch right back here. And the nice thing about the heel drop, and I hope my dog has been playing in my office, so there might be some dog toys on my floor. But the nice thing about the heel drop is that you can really progress it to make it more or less impactful. So basically it's coming up onto the balls of your feet and then letting the heels drop down. I'm
Oh,
doing this here without a mat. I don't have osteoporosis and I do a lot of impact exercises, so that's safe for me. But if you do have osteoporosis and you're not used to impact exercises, we always recommend that you have a mat or a carpet under your heels there so you have a little bit of cushion. But you can also add more cushion by wearing sneakers or something like that. And then of course you can start with sneakers and then work your way to doing that without sneakers as a form of that progression that we talked about. And then you can always do a bigger heel drop where you come up nice and high on the balls of the feet and you drop really heavy. That would be more impact. That would be a harder or like a progressed version. Or you can just do a little one if you're feeling at all nervous or if your osteoporosis is more severe and you want to start with something lighter.
um, one question I had is in your program, I noticed you have certain programs people can begin.
Mhm.
Um, do they do this on Zoom at home?
So our program is delivered through an app called CoachRx. And so the videos are all pre-recorded. You watch the videos and you can do them on your own time. But we also have a kind of a hybrid style training where we have Zoom meetings, but we don't do our workouts on Zoom. Those are where you can come in, you can ask questions, your coach is there, you can do a form check, you can connect with your community, and we kind of guide you through the program using those meetings as touch points throughout.
So this is um, the program that you offer is not only uh, uh, af- um, a exercise building and strength building through that program, but as well, they're getting nutrition counseling and coaching.
We don't
Training.
have nutrition counseling as part of the program. We're solely focused on exercise in our program. But
Okay,
if you want some extra nutrition help, you can always connect with me directly. And I have a few ways to work with myself for nutrition.
okay. Is this type of nutrition for osteoporosis specifically?
Yeah, menopausal women, osteoporosis. Yep.
Great. Okay, let's see. Someone asked before that question, um, using weighted vests. How do you feel about them?
Yes, weighted vests are a very hot topic right now. So we do utilize weighted vests in our program. I think that it's gotten a little bit confusing online about what a weighted vest does and doesn't do. And part of that is because of the research that's available right now. So right now, there's not a lot of research that's solely looking at bone density and a weighted vest. It's always combined with another, or it's almost always combined with another modality. So a lot of the ones that people are looking at, it's combined with resistance training or impact training. So it's really hard to say, is it the weighted vest? Is it the impact training? Is it the resistance training? Is it the magical combination of the two? We can't really parse it out with the information that we have, but we do know that those studies exist and bone density has improved with those interventions. So that's how we use them. We use them as part of our program. So in our strength training program, we have a few different circuits that you move through in your exercise routine. And one of them is a weight vest circuit. And that's about a 10-minute circuit, and you go through three different exercise with a little bit of impact and a little bit of balance to kind of warm you up for some of the harder stuff coming up in later in the workout. So I think there is benefit to weighted vests. It's going to provide a really nice axial load. It wraps all the way around the body, so it creates a nice even loading around the vertebra, so it's not too much in the front or too much in the back. So we do love weight vests, but we always go back to kind of like what the meat and potatoes of the research shows us around bone density, and that is strength training is the intervention that we're really focusing on.
Yeah. Uh, and axial loading makes
Yes.
a lot of sense. Yes. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Can I just say, do you recommend a certain type of weighted vest or do you sell them with your,
We don't personally have our own or anything like that. We tend to recommend a adjustable weight vest because that way you can always start a little bit lighter. They're a little bit uncomfortable to get used to for some people. We're not used to wearing weight on our back quite like that.
Sure.
So some people like to start a little bit lighter. So an adjustable weight vest gives you some leeway to play with that. And then you can increase it as you become more accustomed to it.
Mhm.
But we talked about progressive overload. At a certain point, we're not going to be able to load that vest, as heavy as we can with our strength training exercises. So there's a little bit of like a stop gate with the vest as well in terms of that progressive overload.
Sure. Do you recommend walking with one?
If I was specifically thinking about bone health, I would probably recommend that you do some impact exercises with the weight vest instead. But if you're just looking for generalized health and fitness, the weight vest walk is a great option. But like I said, when your body's really smart, so if you're doing the same kind of pattern, your body's going to start to tune it out. So the walking isn't going to provide the same impact that something like a little impact circuit would because you're changing up the stimulus with each new exercise and you're doing it for a shorter period of time. So your bones don't get kind of like bored and
The
tune out
way.
the
Yeah.
stimulus. Yeah. I call it like the car alarm effect where you just start to tune out the car alarm. It's kind of like the same thing with your bones tuning out the running.
It's a good analogy. How many weeks is the program? How long are the classes?
Yep, our program is 13 weeks, which I know sounds like a little bit of a weird number, but the first week is an introduction week. So, in that first week, we have you go through all of the functional movements that you're going to be doing through the rest of the program, unloaded. And we ask that you send through the app that we deliver the program, you can send a private video directly to your coach. And so we ask that you send a video of yourself doing your squat, your hinge, your overhead press, your row so that we can check your form before you add load to it. And that way we make sure that everything looks really good to go before we start strength training. So the actual strength training portion of our program is 12 weeks and it's broken into three phases. Phase one is all about just getting comfortable with the exercises, working on your mobility, your stability. So we keep the weights intentionally a little bit lighter or more body weight focused exercises. And then in phase two, we start to add on some weight. So that's where we kind of instruct you on how to gently increase that weight and build some confidence there. And then in phase three, we work really on kind of controlling the movements through some tempo exercises. So we slow down certain parts of the movement so that you build more control. And it's really effective for connective tissue health as well, those slow lowering exercises.
Yes, that's
Keep the joints
excellent.
healthy.
Exactly. Um, this woman says that she has been working out with a trainer and she does other things like planks and side planks and toe touches and things on a ball and leg tucks and things like that and glute bridges. Are any of those done? And do you recommend those types of extra things? Are those incorporated into the program?
Yeah, I was just looking at
Okay.
her thing so I could see what she was doing there.
Yeah.
So we love planks and side planks because as I mentioned, the wrist is a really common site of osteoporosis as well. So when we think of that axial load, you can imagine a plank. A plank,
Yeah.
if you're putting your body weight down, that's creating axial load through the bones of the wrist. Um, so we love planks, side planks to help load those wrists and get the bones around that area nice and strong. Toe touches, there's a few different things that could mean to me, but I think that might mean a balance exercise. Um, we also utilize those if it's what I'm thinking it is. And then things on the ball. So glute bridges on a ball, I'd have to see the person doing it. But my only concern with that would just be creating a little bit of excessive pressure around the vertebra around the neck. Um, and then leg tucks on the ball. Again, I might need a visual of what that is. Um, in general, when we're thinking about strength training, we really just want to make sure that we're not creating too much flexion through the spine, so rounding the spine forward, because that's what's going to put that excess weight on the front of the vertebra, which is more susceptible to the fractures. So we really focus on keeping a nice tall line and trying to load really evenly around the vertebra so that we definitely use bridges. We're just kind of specific in the positioning of them. And then things like squats and hinges, we're always kind of cueing a really nice long neutral spine to make sure there's no excessive pressure through the front there.
Makes a lot of sense. Um, someone asked, are there any exercises that are bad for people with osteoporosis? And could
Yeah.
somebody mute that's speaking? Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. Um, yeah, so I was just kind of touching on that coincidentally. But basically we wouldn't want to, so if I was gonna say if there's like one bad
Yeah.
exercise for osteoporosis, the thing that would come to mind for me is something called the Jefferson curl, and that's where you're actually loading flexion through the spine. It's not inherently a bad exercise, but if you have osteoporosis, I definitely do not recommend it. And so that would be like holding a weight and then rounding your spine forward and rounding your spine up. So don't do that. Keep a nice long spine and focus on hinges and squats instead. Cat-cow is a little bit more nuanced. We actually do utilize some cat-cows in our yoga portions of our program. So cat-cow, we take ourselves out of the axial position. So when we're kind of in the position of gravity pressing down on us, we've got more of that axial force. When we take our spine and then we bring it parallel to the floor instead of perpendicular, now that axial load isn't the same across the front of the vertebra. So we kind of lower the axial load by coming into a tabletop position. And then in cat cow, the way that we cue it in our yoga classes is just a very gentle movement. So we're not pushing into the floor and trying to round as much as we can when we're coming into that kind of like angry cat shape. Instead, it's just a really gentle movement. And the reason that we do like to include that is because there's no way we can completely eliminate certain movement patterns from our life. You are going to have to bend forward sometimes. And that's actually a really important thing to keep your body and your nervous system accustomed to that. So we can do it in a really safe way with an exercise like cat cow. Cat
Mhm.
cow is also really great because it allows you to move through different positions for the muscles around the back, the chest, the shoulders, and that can help you to avoid um, excess tension from always holding yourself in one posture. And then the discs of our spine actually, they don't get blood flow. So what they rely on movement to bring hydration and circulation to them. So something like cat cow is really gentle, and you can think of it like just kind of gently bringing that circulation to the discs, which is going to keep the discs nice and plump, which is actually going to help support or reduce rather the risk of compression fractures because now you've got more like juicy plump disc rather than a kind of like a dried out thin disc. So cat cow is a little bit nuanced, and
Okay.
you'll probably hear different practitioners with different opinions. Um, but the approach is really what we think of. We're going to do it really gentle, but include it for the benefits that it does have.
Good to know. I was wondering this too. I saw that you had a slide that had a person using a jump rope. Is that something that you do at the with the training, or that was just an example?
That was the best impact graphic I could find. I might need to look for a better one. We don't personally really use jump roping. I think a little bit of jumping is okay depending on the person and the situation. So always, use your best judgment here. If you have really severe osteoporosis, I wouldn't go right into jump roping. And I would definitely work with a practitioner who is comfortable working with people, who is knowledgeable about working with people with osteoporosis, so they can help guide you through
Yeah.
your impact exercise progression. But we tend to start with our heel drops, some stomping, depending on how hard you're stomping. We do a lot of step ups, which provide some impact when you're stepping your foot on and off of that box. And then we do progress our way up to things like a jump squat or, well, let's see what else. We got jump squat. We have a few different kind of like quadrant jumps. So you jump forward to the side, back, and to the other side. So that way you're changing the angles and the angle of input that it's going up into the femur. So
That's
I wouldn't
great.
go right to jump roping. Instead, kind of focus on those lower impact exercises and then slowly work your way up to some higher impact, preferably under the support of a coach who knows what they're doing.
Okay, that is so good. I know that if you would produce this video, the prices will always change as time goes on. So if I ask you the prices, it's not going to be relevant necessarily, but we will put that in the chat
Yeah.
if you want to share that with me later.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, if you want, I can tell you the current prices. So right now it's 995 if you sign up front, or it's three payments of 350. Like you said, that will likely change in the future, but that is the current cost right now.
And that's for a 13-week program.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And then someone asked, how do you get a coach? And I imagine that's how you get a coach, is with
Yeah. So
deciding out.
yeah, you can try doing some like Googling to see if there's any coaches, nearby you. The BHOF has the Bone Fit directory, so that is a really great resource as well. But just remember that a lot of the practitioners or the teachers on BHOSF's Bone Fit, I would really look for a strength trainer as opposed to someone who doesn't have that certification. And that's because they're the ones who are going to know how to support you with not only the strength training exercises, but progressive overload. That's something that you really don't learn through something like yoga or Pilates. So
Yes,
make
I
sure that you're
agree.
working with a strength trainer.
I agree. And especially safely.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so what are your thoughts about the Meradyne vibration platform?
Yeah,
Isn't that
so
another hot topic?
vibration platforms in general, they don't provide quite the same amount of impact as an impact exercises. It's not quite as much vibration going through the body. So it's a lower level vibration. And then it's also, if we think again about, our target tissue is really going to be the hips and the spine. If you're standing on that vibration plate, it's got a really long way to travel up if it's a low level kind of frequency of vibration, and it often doesn't actually hit the spine and the hips. And I have done a little bit of research on the Merodyne, and the most I could find that was really reliable said that they saw improvements in the distal tibia, which is the lower part of your ankle bone. So you can see that it's getting some vibration, some stimulus, but it's not making its way up into the spine or the hip, unfortunately.
Okay, good to know. Um, Someone said they've read that unsupported forward folds are not good. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, what I'm assuming what they mean by that is just like a flexion of the spine where they're not really engaging their core or using a more neutral spine to fold forward. So I would say yes, we do want to avoid that flexion, especially repetitively, fast, and or under load.
Yeah, I used to do sit-ups all the time, and I think that's not necessarily
No,
recommended.
we do a lot of core exercises, but we don't use sit-ups.
Okay, and let's see. How soon when people get into your program do they see a change in their own DEXA scans?
Yeah, that one's a little bit hard to say because so much of that depends on their own like insurance and when they're able to get a repeat DEXA. So in general, bone doesn't, change overnight. It takes some time. So I would say the minimum amount of time you really need to be able to devote to a strength training routine before you can see changes, particularly in a DEXA because of the sensitivity of that machine, is at least 6 months, but sometimes it's closer to a year or even 2 years. But we have seen about 80% of our participants have improvements in their DEXA at their follow-up report.
Good to know. Um, Now when I'm noticing a question from Jerry about machine back extensions, safe safely done if you have osteoporosis. Are you talking about the Pilates ones, Jerry? The
Uh,
Pilates machine?
no, I'm talking about, for example, at the Y where I train, we just recently got these new machines in called eGym. I don't know if you're familiar with eGym, but I guess they're electric machines. And it's a circuit program. And so I can't see myself that good, but if I go to the side, if you can see me, there's a bar behind your back. And what you do is you push the pad back and you come back up to an upright seated position. So you're kind of doing like a crunch for your back is the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, I did quickly Google it just to get a visual. Um, from what I can see, and I'm not watching a video because I don't want to do that while we're on while we're on this call. But from what I can see, I think that would be okay. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about giving you a yes or a no here because I don't totally know the machine. But extension is good. So that's taking you out of that, forward posture. We actually want to extend. We want to strengthen the extensor muscles. Um, and as long as when you're coming back forward, again, it's not like coming into a rounded position. I think that would be okay.
Mm. Okay.
Um,
Thank you for that.
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at
There's,
the juicy plump. I saw a question that said, "How do you get the juicy plump discs? I want them." Movement. Move your body. Gentle, circulation kind of movement. So it's some nice gentle yoga, moving your body in general will help you keep those discs nice and healthy.
that's great. Let's see. I don't know. There's talking about a question about the drop from a chin up bar.
Yep.
Do you,
Yeah, we in our in-person program, we actually do utilize that exercise. Since most people at home, the virtual program is a home-based program, so I make the assumption that you don't have a pull-up bar at home, so we don't use that. And I don't have data that's, compares the amount of impact that it is from the chin-up bar to the heel drop. Um, so I don't really have a great way to answer that one, unfortunately, but I would say that they're both going to provide a healthy impact through the spine.
okay. Someone asked if Zumba is an impact exercise.
You know what? I haven't ever done Zumba, so I don't even really know what a Zumba class looks like. I'm
I
really
don't
sorry, I can't
remember what
answer.
it is like either.
I
That's so
know it's a
funny.
lot of movement and it's like a dance-based
Yeah, I
exercise.
think it's dancing.
Um,
Or did someone, who'd ask that question? Mary Ann, do you want to address that?
Hi, thanks for taking the question. Yeah, it's kind of downsy, it's often moving from side to side. There's not a lot of jumping, but it's movement. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't done that much Zumba, but I was just wondering if it would be good to do more of it, if that might increase the impact. Just
Yeah, I mean, I think that Zumba would be, assuming that you're just keeping your spine in a safe position and everything. I don't think there's too much like forward folding or anything in Zumba. Um, but I would say it's a good exercise. It isn't going to provide you that external load like strength training will, but it might give you some impact. And then one thing about the impact exercises too, especially when we're talking about the hip, is that trying to get that impact from different angles. So if we were going to use stomps as an example, we wouldn't, if we just stomp up and down, that's beneficial. But if we can stop forward and to the side and maybe kind of to the back, and we can hit some weird angles, stomping in different directions, that's actually going to be more healthy for getting that hip bone density because it's going to send that impact, that stimulus to different angles and parts of that kind of funny shaped bone. So something like Zumba where you're sidestepping, you're moving forward and back, theoretically it could be a really great thing in that regard.
thanks.
It depends on the amount of impact or, repetition, but as long as your spine is in a safe position and you're moving with, body awareness, I think it's a good exercise to include.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. One of the questions here says, then I just want to repeat it because Jenny already answered this person, but what part of the spine does the program benefit the most? And she answered axially loaded exercises, which is what you were talking about from the top down, right?
Mhm.
The
Yeah, so exercise,
Axial loading.
I was trying to find the question to see if I could read it, but
Uh,
that's okay. Oh,
it's
what part of the spine? Yeah, so axial load is going to go right through, right, it's going to create that pressure down through the entire spine. So it's going to hit, the entirety of the spine, um, from, thoracic down.
someone also asked their contact information uh, could be um, an email to here to help at kaariprehab.com. And once again, Kaari has two A's, Kaari, prehab.
And just to add to that, if you go to our website, clicking any of the buttons there will result in you being signed up for a newsletter. So then you are in touch with us.
Great, great. I did it already. Okay. Let's see. Um, is using the treadmill to walk with a 6 or 7 incline a good idea? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I was actually I was just on a hike with a friend who's a physical therapist, and I was like, I wish there was a study that looked at how hiking versus just walking impacts your bone density. Um, and we were kind of chatting about it. And so this is all just, theoretically, I don't think there's any, and if there is research and I'm missing it, please, I always love to read it, so share it with me. But theoretically, I think it could have a slightly more beneficial effect on the bones because it's going to be a more muscularly demanding exercise because you've got that incline, so the muscles are going to create a stronger pull on the bone. That we didn't really get into this, but your muscle kind of pulling on the bone is also going to stress the bone to lay down more tissue as well. So a stronger pull, more stress, more bone tissue. That being said, again, it is a body weight exercise, and we know that it doesn't provide that much impact. So I think there's lots of benefits to it. It's going to be really great for your heart health, your cardio health. There might be some slight increases in the tension on the bone, but I don't think it wouldn't be an effective, it doesn't kind of check the boxes of an effective bone density strategy. But it can definitely be something in your workout routine, included with the strength training and the impact.
It's so funny because there's a Y near my home and they offer so much for seniors in terms of water aerobics. And from what I've understood, water aerobics and water swimming even does very little for your bones. Am I right on that?
Yeah, so you can think again, we're trying to increase the load on our body through the weights, the weight vests, the impact exercises. When we go into water, we're actually unloading our bones. So I think water aerobics are amazing in terms of it, again, like a general exercise program, but when we're being really specific to bone health, it's actually not checking any of those boxes.
Actually, there have been studies that are showing water aerobics does have
Ooh,
aerobic, it does have osteopositivity.
Really?
And there was one that came out just last year. I think it might have been based in Britain, but it, I happened, believe it or not, it popped up on my screen on my phone as I was leaving the water aerobics class.
they're
So I
watching
read
you.
everybody in the gym, in the locker room. So I would check that
All right.
Okay,
information
yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. I'll definitely
because
do some extra research on that. I wasn't aware.
yeah,
Yeah.
because there is a lot more strength training that goes on with water aerobics. Now, I've been in water aerobics classes for a good 5 or more years, and sometimes instructors are afraid to give the kinds of weights that really give you resistance. But
Mhm.
if you're doing real resistance and you're hitting the floor without breaking your knees, which some of us have to worry about, um, then you should be getting stuff, and that's where I get the most exercise, and my numbers are going in the correct direction according to my last doctor's
Great.
appointment.
I'm really happy to hear that. I'm glad you found that works for you, and I'm going to do some digging into that research. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for
I look
sharing.
forward to hearing what you and others
Yeah.
have to
Thank
say
you.
about that.
Thank you, Steph.
Just to add to that, I did a quick AI search on the research on water aerobics for bone density, and it says that they do find statistically significant, but unfortunately not clinically significant improvements in bone density, meaning that it's measurable, but debatable as to whether it reduces the fracture risk just because the improvements tend to be small. And what it also said was that while land-based resistance and impact exercises yield slightly greater improvements in bone mineral density, aquatic exercise is a safe and viable alternative for people with joint concerns, fear of falling.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yes, and as I say about water aerobics, you don't sweat and you can't fall.
Madeline, did you have a question too? You're muted though. Madeline?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So swimming provides resistance, especially if you use those paddles, and the muscle is pulling on the bone. I would think that that offers some stimulation to the bone, but more importantly, swimming improves your posture
Yeah.
because you are elongating the spine as you move through the water. If you're and you're rotating it with that propulsion, if you're swimming properly. And I don't rely on swimming entirely. I do the weights also and the impact also on land.
Right.
But if you love something and you're doing it, even if it offers a little bit of benefit, just do it, because it also helps your stress, and stress is not good for osteoporosis either.
Mhm.
That's true.
So it's really, I think, I
Sure.
wouldn't say don't swim.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madeline.
Oh, yeah. And I do just want to say, never am I ever going to say, like, don't do an exercise you love unless
Right.
it's a Jefferson curl and you have osteoporosis. But when we're just thinking about,
Right.
bone density and being very specific
being
to those
kind-
benefits, but I completely agree with your point on the pull of the muscle on the bone and then the stress relief as well. And then I'm definitely doing some digging into some of that research as well. So I
But
really
the
appreciate that.
elongating of the
Thank
spine,
you.
the elongation of the spine prevents the compression fractures.
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay. I just want to say this has been fabulous, and I had no expectation of what you were going to talk about exactly, but it's so perfect. I think there's people that are on this today that are very interested in making sure they have alternatives to some of the choices they've been given. And certainly exercise and exercising safely is one of them. And it's great that you're doing it online.
Yeah, we started our in-person program and we were seeing really great results, but we were like, we can only touch so many people in our small town. We got to get this out there. So we're so grateful for Kaari for helping us get it out there and being just amazing people to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. We're thrilled to do it. And, I want to say, I like that you do so much follow-up and coaching with your clients so that you have someone who's looking at you, looking at the videos when you're doing them. For some of our members, they don't live near any gym anywhere with any physical therapists or any strength training conditioning experts. So it's not possible for them to do this. So having a virtual offering is excellent,
Yeah.
especially one that's conscionable the way you are, and you're really doing such a great job of trying to get the word out and helping people.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you getting on. Thank you, Jenny, also, and Michaela. This was perfect. I appreciate both of you. Can I bring you back on, Jenny?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. It was a real joy to be able to chat with everybody. I know we usually can't get through all the questions that pop up in a presentation like this. But again, if you go to our website, literally clicking any of the buttons on there is gonna, if you leave your email address, you will be signed up for a newsletter, and you can respond, like just hit reply on any one of those newsletters, and you will get directly in touch with either myself or our executive assistant, Juliana, and we do respond to every single query within 3 business days. And we also host regular Meet the Experts sessions, as well as webinars of our own, which you're welcome to come to. Most of those are free, and we have those at least once a month. So we have lots of opportunities to connect as well. So appreciate all of you being here and being an attentive and engaged audience. Thank you so much. And thanks for having us, Shelley. It was really nice.
Thank you. I hope we'll see you again.
Thank
Okay.
you.
We'll come
Thank
back
you.
anytime.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
rest
you all.
of your evening.
You too. Thank you.